And here we go. Digital Adele back with another Hoops Profile Beyond the Backboard podcast for you with my co-host, Matt Hanifan. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, man. The NBA season's underway. College basketball started this week. So I'm very pumped about that, even though there's like 100,000 games a day. But no, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing outstanding. Thanks for asking. Yeah, there's tons of basketball on in the last few days. The NBA had almost like every team play. College had almost all their guys play. This class is loaded. Speaking of the 2025 NBA draft class, is absolutely loaded with talent. So can't wait to dive into that. We're going to finish up our 2024 kind of recap of the rookies, and then we'll start talking about some of the prospects for the 2025 draft after that. But yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm ready to get into it. Today we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. Before we get into their class, just remember to like, subscribe, follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere podcasts are found, YouTube. Follow us for the Miami Heat content on 5 Reasons Sports on playback.tv/5RSN. We watch the Heat games and chop it up there. But Matt, where can they find you, follow you, and get more of your work?
At MPH_A24_. That's where you can find me on Twitter. I know that's like the Pythagorean theorem or whatever it is. But you can find me there on Twitter. You can find me at hoops.com, mountainwestconnection.com, where I'll be doing some college basketball stuff for the Mountain West Conference. I know there's a couple of prospects that at some point I'm going to force you to talk about from over there. And then vendettasportsmedia.com, in addition to watchplayback.tv/5RSN. Where you can find me with Adel and plenty of others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network as we chop it up during Heat games and even sometimes not during Heat games. But now, man, let's get into it.
Absolutely. Let's jump into it, man. So the first pick we're going to discuss is the pick that they acquired from San Antonio, which is the number 8 pick in the 2024 NBA draft to get Rob Dillingham. What are your thoughts on Rob?
He was the guy, I mean, you and I have talked about this on and off air before. He was a guy that was an incredibly polarizing prospect. Like, people liked him, I think, or at least in part due to like his shot making, he razzle dazzle. Like, he was very flashy with what he did in his 1 year at Kentucky. And like, you could just see the shiftiness in his game and like sometimes the burst when he was on the ball and like all of that stuff. But then like you watch him during summer, especially at the start of summer league, like, again, he's 6'1", 6 foot, 160 pounds. Like, he's not a big guy at all. And the NBA isn't a league where it's a wings league. It's not a small guards league. And small guards typically have trouble with acclimation, or at least the majority of them do. I mean, obviously there's outliers, there's exceptions to the rule, but it's not a small guards league typically. And Rob was the guy, like, you could see at the start of summer league where like he was still trying to find his shot, still trying to find his offensive consistency, like trying to find where to get his shot specifically. And so he struggled with that at certain points, but then you watch like the Orlando Magic game where he had 25 and 12 and like he was getting to his spots, he was making the right reads. And he's a very interesting player because, again, like, I think he's in a good spot with where he's at in Minnesota just because he's playing behind a small guard in Mike Conley, who, I know it's a different kind of, they have a different kind of skill set and somewhat of a different kind of archetype, but like Mike is a very smart player and he's did a very good job his entire career, despite his, physical shortcomings. He made it, like, I don't know how long he's been in the league, but he's been in the league a long time. Like 10, 15 plus years. Like, he's been in the league. He made his dues in the league for a while. He's still in it and he's still playing it at a relatively, decent level. And so Rob is able to learn behind him. I don't know how much of an impact Rob is going to make right away. But like, again, you can see the shot making when he's, especially like sometimes even like the tough shot making, like he kind of reminds me, I know this probably isn't the right comparison and I'm very bad with NBA comparisons, but just in terms of like a skill set esque, like he kind of reminds me of like a Terry Rozier, because of the size shortcomings. And like, to me, Rob is like a combo guard in a point guard's body. Like he's a combo guard in a smaller guard's body. If that makes sense, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, you make
Um,
a lot of sense with that.
but like he kind of has that score first mentality. I mean, he is like a solid playmaker. I'd say he's not like a phenomenal playmaker, but like he's, I think, an above average playmaker. And I don't know if that will necessarily translate to the NBA just because of his physical shortcomings, but
Right.
I think he can be like a solid playmaker at some point.
Right.
Um, Especially when you learn behind a guy like Mike Conley. But like he's gonna get hunted defensively. Like no one has to watch it. Like he's just gonna get hunted defensively.
Yep.
And I think that's my biggest worry. No matter how good he is as a shot maker, no matter how good he is as a playmaker, and like thankfully Minnesota again, he's in a context to where like he's surrounded by guys like Rudy Gobert
Right.
and Nas Reed and McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, who I think's improved vastly as a defender over the last 2-3 years. Like he's in a context to where it could benefit him in that perspective, but he's going to get hunted defensively, and I think that's just my biggest worry. In addition to like, okay, how is he going to consistently find his own shot against NBA caliber players, against NBA caliber athletes, on a night to night basis?
Nope, you're 100% right about that, man. And, the thing with me with Rob Dillingham is he is historically small for a guard. And it's not just his height at 6'1", because that's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. But he's also 164 pounds. So he's actually, he's not that sturdy. He's got a decent standing reach on him, but his wingspan isn't great. He's 6'1" with a 6'3" wingspan, so he's a plus wingspan, but it's not great by any stretch of the imagination. I scouted him extensively in college. I watched so many games at Kentucky because, they had so many players that were going to be in that draft. So I watched their games all the time. One thing I noticed about Rob, he's very fast, very quick twitch, but he doesn't change speeds very well. And that isn't like an athletic limitation. That's just his game. You have to consciously work on changing speeds. It's a feel for the game. When to go fast, when to slow it down, herky jerky, throw people off rhythm and that. Whenever, you're coming up through the AAU circuit and in college, you can beat people with just sheer speed. Like that's a big thing that Scoot Henderson struggled with coming out. And I was one of the things I pointed to in my videos, breakdowns of him. You can watch those videos. They're all archived on YouTube under the 2023 draft. In the 2024 draft in the playlist, so you can find those pretty easy. So change of speed, change of direction, those things, are going to be his bread and butter if he's going to stick in this league. Mike Conley was a master at that, locking people on his hip, playing the angles, just being a savvy, smart player, like you said that Conley was. So Rob's definitely going to have to learn. And I think for him to stick in the league, even though he's a tough shot maker, he's going to have to lean more into his playmaking, setting people up, especially on that team that's a winning team and a good team. If he's going to get minutes, he's going to have to be very unselfish, set people up, be efficient, not turn the ball over. But back to him being historically small. When the combine came out and we saw his numbers, I looked at this combine. I'm like, oh, he's like in the top 5 smallest prospects when you look at hand size, weight, wingspan, height. Like he was in the top 5 smallest prospects in this draft. But then I went back further. I went all the way back to like 2012. He's one of the smallest in every single one of those drafts. So when you look at people with those measurables, I don't think I could name more than 2 or 3 that were actually successful. And none of them were the 9th pick in the draft, if I can remember correctly. So, or 8th pick in the draft. So I think he's got a tough road to toe. I mean, I compare him to Lou Williams a little bit. And so he's Lou Williams-ish, but he's going to have to be way more efficient if he's going to take that 6-man scorer off the bench type role. And picking at number 8, is that what you really want out of the 8th overall pick? I think you could consider that a letdown. So I'm not that high on Rob. I think he's going to struggle, but we'll see. I'm rooting for him. Hopefully he can overcome those limitations. Because you know me, I love great point guard play. Great point guard play is something I really like. So we'll see how that goes. Any closing thoughts? I can't talk. Any closing thoughts on Rob before we move on to Terrance Shannon Jr.?
I don't remember the exact package that Minnesota gave up for him. It was like, I want to say it was like a 2030 swap or plus like an additional first or something. Like it wasn't a crazy amount.
Right.
And so I guess considering they leaped into it. I mean, I know this is probably the wrong draft. I mean, we've talked about it before how like flat draft at the top, we very much like the middle of the draft. And, obviously guys like Messi, Ryan Dunn, so on and so forth have impressed throughout. But like, this wasn't the perfect draft to trade into the top 10, but I don't think they gave up a lot to get into the top 10. And so I think, like, if you're just looking at it from like a value proposition standpoint, even though Rob is, to your point, like the physical limitations are very glaring, and there's not a great track record for them, like it may work just in the sense that like it's I don't want to say it's a low risk, it's like a medium risk, high reward type deal, just from again what they gave up to trading into a top 10 in a draft. Because typically when you trade
It
into a
was a
top 10
pick
in a
swap,
draft,
by the way.
it was a pick swap.
Yeah,
Just
it was
a
a
pick
future.
swap.
It was a future draft swap. That's what it was. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So yeah, that's even less than what I previously said.
So here's
So like it's
exactly what it
not
is.
crazy.
I'm sorry, I told you the wrong story. Here's exactly what it is, though. It's the 2031 first round pick unprotected. That's what the Spurs get. A 2030 pick swap, top one protected pick. So Spurs get that as well. Blazers get Rob. So
Blazers
essentially,
get robbed.
Trailblazers. So it said Trailblazers on this article, but Timberwolves. Sorry.
Okay, I was like, wait.
That's what the
Joke
article
on
says.
God.
It's on NBA.com. It's not my fault. Blame NBA.com. But yeah, the T
Okay,
Wolves get it. So
right. So that's
essentially,
what I mean. Like it wasn't a crazy amount.
no. So essentially, you're trading a 2031 first round pick that's unprotected. So that would be what Rob basically is in this draft, and then a 2030 pick swap. So
Right.
really just a first
Right.
round.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, like that. To me, that's not a crazy amount. I mean, we'll see more so what that looks like a few years from now.
Right.
In terms of how good Rob is as a player and where Minnesota is as a franchise. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate how good Minnesota is going to be, 2, 3, 4+ years from now. But
is Ant staying?
I think it can work. Huh?
Is Ant going to stay?
Listen, anything's possible.
Who knows?
It's a Minnesota sports franchise after all. They get their heart broken all the time.
Poor Kevin Harlan.
But I don't think it was a crazy amount that they gave up for him. So I know that again, the skill set and the archetype is maybe a high risk, high reward, but from what they gave up to get a top 10 player, potentially, it may not be that much.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it's definitely risk reward there. So we'll see how it plays out. Hopefully he can overcome those limitations. Let's get into some Terrance Shannon Jr. Now you said Rob Dillingham was polarizing. This kid coming out of college, he had a court case. He beat the case. He was, had excellent metrics in terms of scoring, like just volume of points. But man, does he have some limitations into his game. Doesn't give you much in a half court. Only drives left, has zero right hand. Super explosive in the open court. But even then, he doesn't make the greatest decisions with the ball. If he has a straight line to the hoop, he'll cram on your head. But maybe he'll run into you and you'll get a charge. Or maybe he'll turn the ball over. His three-point shot is broken, in my opinion. I don't understand how people were like, man, he's got a great three-point shot. So Terrance Shannon Jr., I just haven't seen it from him. Didn't see it in Summer League. Didn't see it in preseason. Didn't see it in the early part of the regular season because he gets no run. Yeah, what are your thoughts on Terrance Shannon Jr.?
See, I think I'm with you in the sense like he does have some serious limitations. Summer League, I was a little like pleasantly surprised with this game to some extent. Like I thought he really flashed offensively. I thought he was solid defensively. Um, I thought he was getting his baskets in multiple ways. But I mean, outside of his 3-point shooting, because he didn't shoot the ball well, at least from three during summer league, I want to say it was like 25%, or something like that. Uh, but there is some limitations. Like he is a big physical guard. At least that's kind of my label on him, just because he is 6'6". I mean, I've seen places, a few different places, like they list him at like a forward, and it's just I don't really see that in his game. I think he's more so of like a big guard.
100% agree with that. But he's
Yeah, like
very forceful though.
right, right, and like he does force the issue again. Like I'm, I think he could make more of an impact than Rob will, but I just don't know, or at least as a rookie, just because of his size and like what they may ask him to do. Um, but I don't know if he's going to get to your point. I don't know if he's going to get enough run, and so
Right.
that's where that's. I don't know if Rob is going to either. Um,
Not unless there's an
but
injury.
yeah, yeah. Like to me, he does need to work on his shot. Like his mechanics are a little funky, at least in my opinion, and I think that's the case with a lot of these guys. Now that we go through this, we've gone through all of these. Like a lot of ours, just like yeah, these guys' mechanics either aren't good or like um they need to be worked on a little bit more, so on and so forth. I mean, Ryan Dunn's doing it. We'll get
I
to the
knew you were
Suns.
going to mention Ryan Dunn. I knew it was. As soon as you started down that path of these guys' shots are broken, and we've seen that over and over again, I knew the Ryan Dunn was coming.
I
But
just feel like we're
you're
saying
right.
it on every other pod, and I can't
Can't help yourself.
give enough love to Ryan Dunn. Well, again, we'll get to the Suns part in a future episode. Um, he does like he is very forceful. Like I feel like he's very good in transition. At least that was what I got from him when he was in Illinois. But that was again like you're not going to be consistently playing in transition when you're in the NBA. At least you're not going to be playing at that kind of pace, and that's just what I he does go left. He's going to have to work on his right hand. The decision making when he's getting downhill is something that I think needs to be very much worked on. Just like his last minute playmaking, his shot making, his decision making in terms of which shot he's going to take, his shot selection, like that to me, I think against NBA caliber athletes is going to have to be worked on because it is like very, it's very razzle. I don't want to say razzle dazzle. I said that too
No, it's
often.
not.
That's the
It's
wrong. That's the wrong way to. It's just very like frantic. I think is the word that I'm looking for sometimes. It can be a little bit out of control. But I think during summer I was pleasantly surprised with just his offensive game, and I think there could be something there in the future.
well. So like, here's the thing I noticed in summer league when he's playing against athletes that aren't as good as an athlete as he is, he just out athletes them. Even in the half court, he just puts his shoulder down, a quick first step gets around him, doesn't have to do too much. But if you start making him having to make reads and change direction, not as good. Um, and yeah, like you said, in the open court, he's definitely difficult to deal with. Now, I got a comparison for you without the jump shot. He's very Cam Whitmore like without the jump shot and not as good of handles.
Okay, not as athletic though, right?
I think they're pretty similar athletes, to be honest with you. Cam Whitmore's crazy
You
athletic.
do.
Yeah, he's a better athlete. Cam's a better athlete, but I think they're very similar, like in terms of like explosiveness. They're very explosive. Terrance Shannon's explosive.
Okay,
He
I
just
agree.
can't
I
change
agree with that.
directions. he's
Right.
he's going in one direction and one direction only. That's the difference between those two. And he doesn't have the jump shot.
I think if Cam is like maybe this is the wrong interpretation. I think if Cam is like a 95th percentile athlete whenever he's on the court. Maybe I'm
Mm.
just overestimating his athleticism, but like I just think he's like a top. I mean, again,
So
limitations
are
aside
you
with
saying
this
he's
with this
like
game.
like if you were Cam Whitmore and John Morant, you're putting him in the same category?
I'm saying in terms of like whenever he's on the court with like there might be a good like a guy or two
Okay.
who's better than him.
All right. Yeah, he's super explosive, so that's not crazy to say.
Right. Like I think he's one of, if not the best athlete.
Yeah, he's in like one of those tiers below the best athletes in the NBA. He's like in one of the one tier below those guys.
Yeah, like I don't think he's not Ja.
Nah, that's what I'm saying. That'd be crazy to put them two in the same category. So
no, he's not Ja. Maybe in the future. No. Don't let our guy Eternal hear that. Cut that.
Yeah. Cut it.
So yeah, like I think I hold Whitmore in like a different regard athletically, but that's not a knock on Shannon.
No, not at all. Not at all. He's still very athletic. But yeah, I just think he would have to be on a team that's a little bit younger overall, right? Like Minnesota, even though they have Ant, like Mike Conley's still there. I just don't think they play at a fast enough pace to utilize what Terrance Shannon does best.
Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert.
Very mobile Rudy Gobert.
Naz Reid. Naz Reid isn't a quick pace type of guy. I like Naz Reid, but that's not his thing. So yeah, I just think they would have to play a more up-tempo style to maximize his play, and I just don't see that happening. So, yeah, man, let's move on. It'll be interesting to see how this draft plays out. It's going to be a theme of mine for the next 3.5 years, talking about this is the worst draft class ever, because I don't believe that that's the case, and love to rub it in the noses of the bigwigs at 4-letter networks. But anyway, Matt, one quick thing before I let you go. There was a list by, what was his name? Ashburner. He did a list on Yahoo Sport or NBA.com of the top 5 rookies on the rookie ladder. Can you guess who took the number 1 spot? Steve Ashburner was his name.
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to think. It's probably Misi, right?
It was one Zach Edey. Edey had one decent game, and this guy put him on the top of his rookie ladder. Now, it was a pretty good game, like 25-12 or something like that. but it was one game. The rest of the games, he had like more fouls than rebounds. So,
Khalil Ware, is he on that list? No.
Is he on the Miami Heat? Where is Khalil Ware?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know because he never played.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I mean, you probably go down the list like. I don't think Risa Shea. Not saying he's number 2 or anything. These are just guys off the top of my head. Like Risa Shea hasn't been terrible.
Honorable mention. He got an honorable mention.
Misi.
Misi's not even an honorable mention. He didn't even get not even a word about Misi in this article. That's wild, right?
To me, that's a little crazy. I'm just trying to think of like off the top of my head.
You'll kick yourself if you don't get number 2, because this one's pretty obvious just by the sheer number of minutes this person plays. Not on. I'll give you a hint. Not a very good team. Miami Heat may have played him recently.
Oh, come on. Bub Carrington.
Bub Carrington. Yep, number 2, Bub Carrington.
I love Bub Carrington.
He's an excellent player. I thought he would have been number 1. I thought Bub would have been number 1. Him or your boy. Who's your boy?
Ryan Dunn.
That's the guy. I thought he would have been one of those two. Would have been number 1.
Or Pele Larson. No.
He had a great game, man. Great game.
That's interesting. Those are just like a couple guys off the top of my head that I can think of. I'm sure there's
number 5 was Alex Sarr, also from Washington.
I wouldn't have had him up there. Although I think he's gotten better.
But I mean, over Misi, like it's crazy. It's crazy. And then number 3 was Jalen Wells, also from Memphis.
Okay.
Also very interesting. I mean, on the season, he's averaging 10 points, 4 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, which is way better than anybody thought he was going to do coming out of the draft. I didn't even get to scout Jalen Wells. Just a spoiler alert for all the people out there. We're currently a 2-man operation in terms of the podcast, and I am a 1-man operation in terms of draft evaluation. So unless somebody's on my radar to start with, probably not going to get a chance to scout him. Only one person. But anyway, that is it for today. Let the people know where they can find you, follow you, get more of your work.
You can find me at NPH_824_ on Twitter. You can find me at hothoops.com, vendettasportsmedia.com, MountainWestConnection.com. In addition to watchplayback.tv/5RSN.
Awesome, man. Appreciate having you on. You guys can find me at Digital Adel on all social media platforms. Hoops Profile, Beyond the Backboard podcast, anywhere podcasts are found, and on YouTube for the video breakdowns for the 2025 draft. Speaking of, I think Rutgers plays tonight. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper.
Yeah, or I think Ace is out.
Well, isn't that grand? I like Dylan Harper, so it'll be interesting. Now, it'll be interesting either way, because both of those guys are going to be in the top 3, I would imagine. Maybe not, because K2 has been balling. Knipple, I've confirmed it. It is Knipple. So K2, is what I'm going to call him. He had an outstanding game. Cooper Flagg had a great game, but K2's my guy in this draft so far. Like, I was blown away by that kid. But I'll see you next time, man. Take it easy.